Hey there, friends. I want to talk to you today about the sovereignty of God. But before I do, you got to look and see how this cabin is coming. Isn't this beautiful? We got the roof. It goes halfway back, and then you can see the loft. We're building the loft up there. I've talked about this on a couple shows, but I like to keep showing the updates. On the bottom level, we'll be able to have 30, 40 hungry intercessors we could fit in here for little prayer meetings. And then you come up there will be stairs. Now we're upstairs, up in the loft, and so got a little spot. This is where we'll probably jam all the kids. They can pray from up above. I'm gonna have a little desk over here where I can write and pray and can see down the cut line. Maybe shoot a deer out the window. But yeah, so coming along. This is the upstairs, and then we'll have like a window out here. We're building the altar over there. For those of you who don't know what that is, we're going to build a beautiful little gathering place in the wilderness where we can seek the Lord. But I'm going to have a window so I can see the altar from here, and this will be our first little prayer cabin, and then we'll build about 20 more cabins out in the woods, so you have a place to sneak away from time to time and seek the Lord. And if you come to one of our gatherings and you book early enough, you might be able to stay in one of our cabins. But little by little, we'll be working on this one for a decade or so. If any of you Josephs out there want to sponsor a cabin, talk to me. I'll make sure you get to sleep in it lots. Anyways, sovereignty of God. That's what I want to talk about today. Actually, it was a friend of mine, Rick Vanderwerk, we had a prayer worship gathering here in Calgary this last weekend. Alberta linked gathering. It was just profound. God moved powerfully. But during that gathering, Rick got up and he talked for just a few minutes about the sovereignty of God. And as he spoke, I could just feel peace filling my heart, and faith and a trust in God. And I think it's important to have a good revelation of the sovereignty of God, because when you recognize that God is more involved in the situation than anybody realizes, you have a whole lot less fear. And when you look at what's happening in the world right now, even with the truckers and everything in Canada, you could say, oh no, what's going on? We've lost. They're pushing us out. But when you bring God into the equation, that's not to say that everything that happens is God's will, okay? But recognize this: if we do what he told us to do, we can absolutely expect God to do what he said he'd do. And he said, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, pray, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, I'll hear them. I'll actually pay attention to them. That doesn't always happen, by the way. God ignores a lot of people's prayers. People who do not seek him, who do not humble themselves, who do not turn from wickedness, they don't get God's ear the way others do. But that's what we've done as a church. And thousands, millions of Christians around the world have been seeking God, praying. Thousands of intercessors across Canada have been fasting and praying. We've had night and day prayer for over a year on the firewall. I want you to know God has not ignored those things. And so when things don't go your way, but you've done what God told you to do, you need to know you can trust him. Everything's okay. And the Bible does teach that God is sovereign. He's pulling the strings often more than you would realize. The Bible says that the Most High is sovereign. This is Daniel 4:17. The Most High is sovereign over all the kingdoms on earth. Even Canada? Yes. Even the oil patch? Yes. Even the industry that you work in? Yes. Okay? Doesn't mean he controls everything, but he's sovereign. He has power in every circumstance. And if he has the right people in the right circumstance, he'll use his authority to turn things around. But it says he's the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth. He gives them to anyone he wishes, but he sets over them the lowliest of men. That doesn't mean God picks the biggest loser. It means he picks those who can humble themselves before him. Friends, I want you to know Canada is in its greatest hour. And where you may feel like everything is going down the toilet, friends, keep watching. That's probably what Egypt thought. The Israelites thought when the Pharaoh kept saying, forget it, I'm not going to let him go. And Moses says, let my people go. And he says, no. And it would seem as though things were horrible, but you got to remember that God was the one who hardened Pharaoh's heart. If the Israelites had got mad at Pharaoh, they might as well be mad at God, because God's the one who hardened his heart. Why? Because God wanted to do something very big. And sometimes that's what happens, is God will harden someone's heart so that he can do a greater miracle. You look at Justin Trudeau and what's happening in the world. You can get mad at him, but what if it's God who's hardened his heart? What if it's God who doesn't want him to allow these things to end, because God wants to show off and do something phenomenal in this nation at this time? If God's hardening his heart, he wouldn't be able to choose the right, even if he tried. And I heard an intercessor a few days ago say something that really resonated with me. They said that they heard or they saw, I don't know how it played out, but it was a picture of Justin Trudeau heading right after the Israelites, kind of thing, like Pharaoh running into the middle of the Red Sea. And it was like Justin Trudeau and some of the decisions he's made at this time. It's like he's just headed straight right into the middle of the Red Sea. And this intercessor had said basically what they heard was, I've got him right where I want him now. And so don't you worry one bit. You need to recognize you just do what God told you to do. You just stay faithful. You just keep your heart right. You keep standing. You keep walking in faith. You keep praying. And if they drag the truckers out of Ottawa, guess what? God is still on the throne. And if they lock us down even harder next week, guess what? God is still on the throne. And God has a wonderful end to this story, because his people have absolutely been willing to do what he said. And that was humble themselves. That's what we do. That's why we fast. David said, I humble my soul with fasting. That's why we fast. It's because it humbles us. We've humbled ourselves. We've prayed. We've sought him. We've been leaning in. We've been saying yes. Not everyone, but I'll tell you, enough Christians have said yes to God this year that we can absolutely expect a total breakthrough and turn around in this station. I was walking out in these trails about a year ago, and I was meditating Judges, I believe chapter 6, where it says that God, because there was sin. I want to see if I can find this real quick here, because I can't quote it exactly. I don't have this one memorized. Judges, let's go back. Judges, chapter 6. It says, then, verse 1, then the sons of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hands of Midian for 7 years. And when I read that a year ago, as soon as I read that, I instantly felt the Lord press me on that phrase, 7 years. And I believe that that's exactly what's happened to the church. You see, we see bad things happen in the world, and we think it's because there's bad people in the world doing bad things. Wrong. Oftentimes, when the church falls into sin, when the church gets lukewarm, God allows sin to play. The wages of sin is death. God just allows us to get what we deserve. And I believe that the situation and the circumstance and the ugly in Canada right now is not because bad people in the world are doing bad things. I believe it's because the church is cold, for many decades has become cold and lukewarm, and we lost the presence. And so there's been a season where God has given us into the hands of the enemy. And I believe, I'll just go on a limb here. I believe I'm prophesying it was a 7-year season. And I'm not a prophet, so if I miss it, you have to forgive me. But I believe when I read that, I felt the Lord say, it's 7 years, Steve. It's 7 years. Well, when I read that, it was a year ago. And so I thought, 7 years. We've been handed into the hands of the liberals for 7 years. But then I went and did the math, and I was like, oh no, it's only been 6 years. Trudeau got in 6 years ago. But that was a year ago. And so that was before the election, and I'm thinking, oh, nuts. I still kept praying and believing that we'd win that last election, but we didn't. And but now here we are, and we're getting right close to the end of that 7 years. We've been handed over for 7 years. In November of this year, it will be 7 years that we have been in the hands of liberals, and look what has happened to our nation. But at the end of 7 years, God, just as he did for the people of Israel, God was merciful, and he turns things around. And how does he do it? He does it by raising up a group of 1%ers. That's what I call them, the 1%ers. It's not all of Israel. After 7 years, there was a lot of Israel groaning and grumbling and whining that they'd been in the hands of the Midianites for 7 years. But God chose this tiny little remnant, just 1%. At first, the army was like 30-some thousand people, and God said, too many. I can't win with these odds. I wouldn't make me look good. So he shaves it down to 10,000. And he still says, not good enough. And so he gets rid of all the people who have fear, who are fearful, and those also who are careless. I could preach on that, but I don't want to go into that. He gets rid of you got to be fearless, but you can't be careless, is the point, okay? He gets rid of all the ones who are full of fear, and then he gets rid of the careless ones, and all he's got left is 300. Gideon's little 300. It was only 1% of the original army. And then God wins the battle with 1%. And guess what? They didn't even go out fighting. They went out smashing clay pots. It was just they won by just doing whatever God told them to do, as odd as it seemed. And friends, I want to tell you, that's the season we're in right now. We've been in the hands of the enemy for 7 years, but this is the time. It's coming to an end, and it's not because 99 or 100% of the church all came together in unity. I wish, just so you know, never going to happen. God always works through the 1%ers, those few fearless ones, but fearless but not careless, okay? Fearless but not careless, saying yes to God, living surrendered lives, turning from wickedness, fasting and praying, worshiping, pressing into God, absolutely unwilling to bow to the evil agendas of this time. The 1%ers, those wild radicals, I think you're one of them, all right? Those are the ones that God uses. And through them, and through their obedience, God wins the victory. And so, all that to say this: God is sovereign. God wins this one. And he'll win it without you if you're not willing to say yes to him. But if you're willing to say yes to him, to lean into that kingdom life, then you can be one of the 1%ers who can say, like Gideon in his 300, I was there. I was one of the ones. That's why I'm building this place in the wilderness. It's for the 1%ers. I'm not building a church. I don't want a 10,000 seater. Our little altar out here will only seat 300 and change. Why? Because that's who I want. I want the 300. I want the 1%ers. And so I believe many of you watching, you're one of them. And so you just keep saying yes. You just keep believing. Don't even worry. God has this one. We just have to keep worshiping, keep praising, keep thanking, and watch what God will do. By the way, if you are a 1%er and you haven't yet joined my Oil Patch Pulpit community, make sure you do it. You can't count on social media to get these messages out to you. please join our Oil Patch Pulpit community. All you have to do is send me an email to feedback@oilpatchpulpit.com. Say, Steve, I like your stuff, and I will make sure that you get our videos going forward. And it's the only way that we'll be able to keep in touch with you more and more in the future as things are getting more and more censored. And so if you haven't already, join the Oil Patch Pulpit community by just sending me an email. Feedback@oilpatchpulpit.com. And if you want to know when we're gathering out here in the wilderness this summer, or gatherings that we have in Drayton Valley, if you think that you might drive to Drayton for one, make sure you put a note in there as well. Please inform me of gatherings, and I'll make sure we do. God bless you. Be sure to like, and don't be cheap on the share button. Go ahead, push share. God bless you. We'll see you soon.